All right, so let's work through an example of finding a confidence interval. Data on the speed in miles per hour for a random sample of 30 cars traveling on a highway was collected. The mean speed was 63.3 miles per hour with a standard deviation of 5.23 miles per hour. Find the 95% confidence interval for the mean speed of all cars traveling on the highway. Verify that the necessary conditions hold. Interpret the interval. Is it plausible that the mean speed of cars on the highway is 67 miles per hour? Why or why not? So we are going to find our confidence interval, and then notice that we do have one additional question kind of thrown in there at the end, which we're going to use our confidence interval to answer. So let's start by listing what we know. Our population is all cars on the highway. Our sample, we are told that there were 30 cars sampled. Our X bar is our sample mean, which was 63.3 miles per hour. Our S is our sample standard deviation, so 5.23 miles per hour. Our degrees of freedom. Remember, our degrees of freedom is our sample size minus 1. So 30 minus 1 gives us 29. Again, for our purposes this semester, since we're not using a t-table, this piece of information isn't quite as vital, but it is worth it to mention. Our confidence level is 95%. And then what we want to know, what we are being asked, is we want to find the confidence interval. Right, which is X bar plus or minus M. Right, again, we're going to use StatCrunch to find it. And then we're also asked an additional question. Is it plausible that the mean speed is 67 miles per hour? Why or why not? So we are also being asked, is 67 miles per hour in our interval? All right, so once we have the information that we know, our first step is going to be to, check the conditions. In this case, we've done enough of that in the previous examples in section 9.2, so we're just going to kind of skip that part. They are all met. Our sample size, which is really the big thing that we're looking at, is 30, which is large enough. So we're going to find our standard error estimate. So we're going to take 5.23 divided by our square root of 30. We're going to round this off to 3 decimal values to get 0.955. Right? When we're working through and we're going through and using StatCrunch, which we're going to talk about in the next step, StatCrunch does give us additional information, so you do have the opportunity or the kind of choice of letting StatCrunch calculate your standard error estimate for you if you want to, but since it's such a simple, quick, easy formula, it's not really necessary. All right, so now we're going to find and interpret our interval. So what we're going to do, again, we're going to go to StatCrunch, and we are going to select T-stats, right? Not proportion stats, one sample with summary. And then what we're going to enter, remember we need 3 pieces of information. So we need our sample size, our sample mean, and our sample standard deviation. And if we look back in our problem, notice that these 3 things that I put right here, right, these are the 3 pieces of information that we're going to be entering into StatCrunch. Not necessarily in that order, but that's the information that we need. We need our sample size, our sample mean, and our sample standard deviation. Right, so then we're going to plug that into StatCrunch. We were told to use a 95% confidence level, and then that is going to give us an interval. So we're going to have 61.35 to 65.25. All right, our interpretations. Remember, we like carefully worded interpretations for our confidence intervals. So we start with our confidence level. We are 95% confident that the mean speed of cars on the highway Right, so the second piece of our interpretation is what are we talking about? The mean speed of cars on the highway. And then we finish it off with our actual interval. Is between 61.35 miles per hour and 65.25 miles per hour. Again, our confidence intervals are not just percents like they were back in chapter 7. So we want to make sure we kind of get a nice sentence, we get everything labeled appropriately when we are doing our interpretation as well. So we are 95% confident that the mean speed of cars on the highway is between 61.35 miles per hour and 65.25 miles per hour. All right, now we're going to answer the original question. Is it plausible that the mean speed of cars on the highway is 67 miles per hour? Why or why not? And we said, remember, that question was related to the question that we wrote here, is 67 miles per hour in our interval? Well, if we look at our interval, notice that our interval does not contain 67 miles per hour. So to finish this off for our answer here, we are going to say, no, it is not plausible. Since 67 miles per hour is not in our interval, it is not a plausible or likely value for the mean speed of cars on the highway. So since 67 is not in our interval, it is not a plausible or likely value.